What if the steam engine had remained a toy for eccentric gentlemen in wigs, rather than the heartbeat of an entire era? Imagine this: the 18th century, England, fog over the Thames, and James Watt, instead of tinkering with boilers, decides that it is better to drink tea and write memoirs about how he once almost invented something great. And so, no industrial revolution, no factories, no railroads, no steamer horns breaking the silence. Just horses, plows, and pompous lords still arguing over whose estate smells better because of the properly mowed lawns. Does it sound like an idyll, or maybe like a boring dream from which you want to wake up with a cup of coffee in your hand and thank fate for electricity? The topic of what if the Industrial Revolution never happened is not just a game of historical chess where we rearrange kings and rooks. It's a chance to look into a mirror that reflects a world that could have been ours. Imagine, no smoking factory chimneys, no humming machines, and oh my God, no deadlines because no one had invented the assembly line. But would it really be so great? Or would we still be chasing sheep with pitchforks, cursing the rain that ruined the harvest? It's ironic that we moderns love to romanticize the past. Who hasn't dreamed of quiet candlelit evenings? But are we really willing to give up a hot shower and Netflix for that? This story is interesting because it makes us think. What if one small turn of the wheel, or lack thereof, changed everything? Why are we the way we are? And what would happen if progress was stuck somewhere between medieval fairs and aristocratic balls? I invite you to plunge into this alternative reality, not as a boring lecturer in a tweed jacket, but as a friend who tells you over a cup of coffee, listen, can you imagine what would happen if? And believe me, it will be hard to tear yourself away from this story, because ahead is a world where history has taken a completely different path, with unexpected twists and turns, light humor, and questions that will be running through your head for a long time. So sit back and relax. We're about to begin. So let's imagine the 18th century, where the Industrial Revolution has not started. James Watt, instead of improving the steam engine, writes a treatise on how to make tea on a rainy day and becomes a local celebrity among Scottish housewives. Thomas Newcomen, whose engine could have given an impetus to progress, throws his drawings into the fireplace because no one would understand anyway. And England, instead of becoming the workshop of the world, remains an agrarian country where the main innovation is a new way of shearing sheep. What happens next? The world is stuck in the era of factories. Without steam engines, there is no mass production, which means there are no factories that hum and smoke. Textiles are still woven by hand. Imagine a grandmother with a spindle scolding her grandson for not winding the thread properly. Prices for clothes are sky high because each shirt takes weeks of work. Fashion? Forget about fleeting trends. In the 1800s, everyone wears what their grandfathers wore in the 1700s and calls it classic. It's ironic that aristocrats who used to flaunt silk camisoles now brag about them. My cloak took 3 months to make, and yours only 2. Are you a peasant? Transportation is another story. Without railroads and steamships, we still rely on horses and sails. It takes a week to travel from London to Manchester, if you're lucky with the weather, and if the horses don't decide to go on strike because of bad oats. Dreaming of a vacation in Italy? Get ready for 3 months in a carriage where your best friend will be a traveling potty. Historians are joking. Napoleon wouldn't have lost at Waterloo if his army hadn't gotten stuck in the mud due to the lack of proper roads. Or maybe he would not have gotten there because his horses would have said, "Sorry, Bonaparte, we're tired." The world's economy is based on agriculture. England exports wool, France exports wine, and Russia exports grain. But without machines, the harvest depends on the vagaries of the weather. One rainy year and half of Europe goes hungry. The peasants still live by feudal rules: give the Lord half the harvest and stretch the rest over the winter. Cities are not growing because there are no factories that would attract people from the countryside. London in the 1850s is not a bustling capital with millions of inhabitants, but a large village with a population of a couple 100,000, where the main entertainment is a fair where they show a miracle of technology, a watermill that spins non-stop all day long. And what about science? Without the Industrial Revolution, progress is slow. Electricity is not discovered on a massive scale. Michael Faraday may be playing with magnets, but no one is funding him because who needs it? Instead of the telegraph, letters are carried by horses, and the news of the king's death reaches Scotland in a month. Medicine is stuck at the level of put leeches and pray. Surgery? Without anesthesia, it's more like a medieval thriller than science. It's ironic that the average life expectancy remains around 40 years, and that's if you're not stabbed to death in a duel for an insult to honor. Culture is also changing. Without mass production of books, printing presses have not evolved. Literature is a luxury for the rich. Dickens, if he had been born, would have written by hand, and his Oliver Twist would have been read only by 5 lords at tea. Music was folk songs and harpsichords in the mansions. There were no symphony orchestras or theaters for the masses. Everything was local, for the people. And painting? Artists paint portraits of aristocrats because peasants cannot afford it. It's ironic. Rembrandt or Tiepolo could have become geniuses of rural landscapes with cows. And what about the colonies? Without steamboats and railroads, the British Empire did not grow as fast. India remains fragmented. America, a network of agrarian states that barely trade with each other. Slavery lasts longer because there are no machines to replace human labor. Empires are weakening because they cannot control vast territories without technology. Spain and Portugal may still boast about their fleets, but their ships are rotting away. Now let's imagine the 19th century. The world is a network of small states, where the main struggle is for the best crops and strongest horses. What about wars? Without mass-produced guns and rifles, it's more like jousting tournaments, only with more mess. Napoleon might still dream of greatness, but his army of 20,000 sabers would not have been able to go further than a few villages. And Russia? Peter the Great would have laid the foundations of the Navy, but without steam engines, it would have remained a wooden pride in the Baltic. We are approaching the 20th century without airplanes, cars, or even bicycles. They simply hadn't been invented. The world is populated by 3 to 4 billion people because there are no medical breakthroughs to increase the population, and most of them are peasants. Culturally, we're stuck somewhere between Baroque and Romanticism, but without the romantic factory landscapes. The irony is that someone like Karl Marx could have written Das Kapital. But about what? Without factories, there is no proletariat, only lords and peasants who quarrel over the boundaries of the field. What if we lived in such a world? Without electricity, evenings would be spent by candlelight, and the main question of the day would be whether there would be enough firewood for the winter. Instead of social media, we would write letters that would take weeks to get through, and maybe some of us would still believe that the Earth is flat, because without science and technology, we would not have gone into space and seen it round. It's funny to think that in such a world, the main invention of the century could have been an improved spinning wheel, and we would have been as proud of it as our contemporaries are of smartphones. So, what has this world without the Industrial Revolution brought us to? To a quiet, slow reality where progress is not the hum of machines, but the ability to grow wheat in a rainy year. We would live in an agrarian society where the main characters are not engineers or industrialists, but farmers and horses. London would not have become a metropolis, Paris would not have become a fashion capital, and New York would probably have remained a large village with a beautiful view of the harbor. Without factories and railroads, the world would be smaller, more localized, but would it be happier? This is a question that makes you think. This alternative history shows how fragile our real world is. One James Watt giving up on his engine, and we would still be chasing sheep, cursing the wind for breaking the mill. It's ironic that we love to complain about city noise, smog, and deadlines. But are we willing to trade that for a life where the only entertainment is listening to a squeaky cart? Probably not. Although, let's face it, candlelit evenings sound romantic, until the first time you need to find a toilet in the dark. This story is not just a what if, but a reminder that everything we have, from the coffee in our cup to the light in our room, is the result of a chain of events that could have been cut short. And it's good that it didn't, because living in a world where the main progress is a new breed of horse is probably fun for the first 5 minutes, and then you want to scream, "Where's my Wi-Fi?" So let's thank Watt, Newcomer, and all those weirdos who were not too lazy to turn the gears so that we could spin the news feed. If you enjoyed pondering these what-ifs, please like this post. It's a signal that I wasn't making up Napoleon swearing at horses for nothing. Subscribe because there are many more stories ahead that are hard to tear yourself away from. Let's figure out together how history would have turned out and laugh at how strange we could be in a different world. See you in the next story. Keep the tea hot.